India and the Supreme Court. He is invited as a speaker by various associations and institutes like Institute of Chartered Accountants, Income Tax Bar Association, Gujarat Tax Bar Association, Tax Advocate Association. With this brief introduction, I am presenting here with learned advocate Hardik Praveen Bhai More. Thank you.
Thank you, Lakinwala sir. Now taking not much of time, I request Hardik More sir to start the seminar.
First, am I audible and visible both? And the third is, yes, you can see the screen sharing this PowerPoint presentation on the subject of appeal and assessment. Is it all three are on line or need be anywhere to fill up?
No, in line, sir.
Okay, thank you. So first, I would like to thank Sri B.K. Chavda sir, as well as Deputy Convener to Sri Chintan Bhai Thakkar, as well as Senior Member Sri Manoj Bhai Lakinwala, who introduced me, and other participants. This is one of the favorite subject which has been given to me today. And when you know that when the favorite subject is given, you can speak on the length. No doubt, I'm filling the gap of Shri Rahul Patel, and I'll try my level best to give equal quality as Shri Rahul Patel is was supposed to give on the side. So I'm told that yes, members are facing so many problems on the aspect of this litigation, specifically notices and giving reply. Again, every day they get some notices, how to make reply, and all these issues. So, as I understand, because I also did articleship, I also practiced for some time, not as a chartered accountant, but with chartered accountant. And therefore, I know that limitation, what the chartered account normally face the limitations. And after having practice of almost 18 to 19 years on the legal field as an advocate, I can now say that the mindset of lawyers and chartered accountant both are completely different, because lawyer always look any matter from the litigation perspective, whereas chartered accountant always look the matter from the perspective how the matter would be resolved. So what is the primary thing that each of the chartered accountant has to look into it? And when I say that chartered accountant does not mean that yes, I am a lawyer and therefore I'm saying that, but why I'm focusing on that, because how you look into the matter, that is a absolutely important aspect. Once you need to receive the notice, then the first issue arises whether this notice is properly issued or not, whether the authority who has issued that is proper or not. The third, the grounds or allegations made in the notice are correct or not. So every time you don't need to reply to each of the notices. You have to look into the aspect of the allegations. You need to understand the contents of the show cause notice, and then you have different remedies available under the law. I'll try my level best to have this session absolutely on practical side. No doubt there are theoretical, because there are do and don't do, and therefore I'll also try to cover up that situation. And I'm happy if anyone has a query. I would like to give answer immediately on that point, or after the session, whatever conveyor as well as the deputy conveyor finds suitable. So if we see what we are today discussing about after completion of the compliance, being chartered accountant, like we have filed the returns on behalf of the assessee. Now there is no regular assessment like what it was done under the VAT assessment, under the provision of the VAT as well as CST, that every year there would be regular some assessment. The officer would call with the papers, and after you sit before the officer, and thereafter you can carry out the assessment. or assessing officer can carry out the assessment. Here, there is a self-assessment under the GST. Before this introduction of GST, you are aware about that under the service tax, and who has practiced, who have practiced on the service tax area as well as excise, that government has put trust on the assessee, say that whatever you declare in the return, that will be always assumed is a correct. And thereafter, if there is a audit is carried out, or there is a search, or there are some information based on that any side or counter inquiry is made pursuant to if any supply or a manufacturer or service is being found escape from this return, then they carry out the appropriate proceedings. But otherwise, whatever the once you file the returns, that return would always be considered as an appropriate return, and no any other further proceeding will be carried out. Now that concept has again brought into this GST, and that is really good, because if you see, GST is nothing but is a combination of the earlier VAT regime as well as Central Excise Act and the Service Tax Act, that means Finance Act. It's a combination, because whatever the provisions the government find proper, they have picked up from each of the act and try to put in a consolidated way. So one, the aspect is return has been filed, or ultimately any of your client face inquiry, then what the remedy is available. And for that perspective, I may say that under the law, there are two remedies available with you. One remedy is writ petition, and second is the adjudication and consequently the appellate proceeding. Now, in case of the writ, no doubt my topic is today for adjudication and the appeals. But if I don't discuss on the writ side, then my topic would not be completed. Because for each notice does not mean that you have to give reply and you have to participate in the adjudication proceeding. In an appropriate place, you have to invoke High Court door, and you have to knock the High Court door and have to invoke the writ proceedings. So in writ also, there are two types of writs. Sometimes you can directly, you can approach to High Court, and sometimes if situation arises, you can directly approach to the Supreme Court. And you have seen that many cases, assessee instead of approaching to High Court, they directly approach to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court entertained the petition. So issue arises, under which situation you can go directly to High Court or Supreme Court. Let I first speak on the Supreme Court side. Normally under Article 32, you can approach to the Supreme Court, but only in the case of there is a violation of the fundamental rights. Now, what is the fundamental rights under the constitutions? One of the fundamental right is to do the business. If you are not allowed to do business, either business or profession, or even your clients are not allowed to do business because of some stringent action being initiated by the GST authorities, you can very well approach to the Supreme Court. While carrying out the petition in Supreme Court, just you have to show that because of this action, my fundamental right has been violated, and therefore I have come to this court. Secondly, you can go to High Court also. Under Article 226, you can approach to the court, and when you approach to the court, there are different type of the writ petitions. Normally there are 4 types of writ petition, and out of 4, people invoke in normal circumstances 2 or 3 type of writ petition writs in the general cases. First writ is a writ of certiorari. Second is a writ of mandamus. Third is a writ of prohibition. Fourth is a writ of habeas corpus, and in the rarest rare case, you can also invoke writ of quo warranto. So these are type of the writs. I know that being chartered accountant, you may not like to, or you may not want to go on this aspect, but why it is important? Because every writ has a different meaning, And under the GST regime, you can advise to your client to go to the court under specific rate. And that is the whole reason I try to put in a very short manner and in an easy language, so that ultimately even chartered accountants who are not practicing on the legal side or litigation side can easily understand. And endeavor is to that this situation you can pass on to the client in a appropriate cases. So first is the writ of habeas corpus. Now what is meaning of corpus? Corpus means the body. You have seen in last 2 years and specifically in last financial year that GST officers illegally detains or arrest many people under the GST regime, and specifically on the cases of the fake invoices. Even in sometimes you have also seen that your clients are arrested for some wrong availment of credit, wrong pass of the credit, or so many examples. So in that situation, normally when the person is arrested, you can go to magistrate court for bail and try to get try to always resolve that how the person will be enlarged on the bail. But there is a writ of habeas corpus. When you find that the person has been arrested or detained without authority of law, then instead of going into the straight line, that means approaching the magistrate court, you can go to high court seeking writ of habeas corpus by saying that this person authority has detained this person illegally and therefore need to be released him without going into the regular aspect. And I give practical example in the case of Gujarat High Court. In Gujarat High Court, there is a case of Suresh Ghadecha, where he was arrested on the ground of fake invoices, that he issued fake invoices, simultaneously also availed the credit without receipt of the goods based on the invoices of that supplier who have not done any business on this aspect under the GST. Since the arrest was illegal, the petition was filed in the High Court and the person was released on the first day of this arrest. For the reason, there was illegal arrest, because the authority did not have power to arrest and that authority arrested him. So ultimately, what is meaning of illegal arrest? Like under this GST, under section 67, person can be arrested only after approval of the commissioner. If commissioner has not given any authority, or he has not approved, or he has not authorized that person to arrest that particular assessee, in that case, that respective authority does not have power to arrest that person. Once the person does not have power to arrest, and if he has arrested the person, that is considered illegal arrest. Similarly, after the arrest, it is an obligation upon the officer to produce before the magistrate within a period of 24 hours from the time of arrest. If the person has not been produced before the magistrate within 24 hours, it is considered as an illegal arrest. Many times you find that the person is registered with the central authority. His jurisdictional officer is a central authority. State does not have power to even carry out the search at the particular assessee, and then he invokes such power, then also you can go to the High Court under the writ of habeas corpus. So these are the this is a case where you can knock the door of High Court and say that yes, person should be released on the immediately released, since it is that person has been arrested without authority of law. Second is a writ of mandamus. What is meaning of mandamus? Mandamus means command. When you find that the assessing officer or GST officer or proper officer has illegally initiated action against any person or against any business, then the assessee can go to High Court seeking writ of mandamus. I give 2-3 examples. First example is a bank account, attachment of the bank account. Many times you find that yes, bank account has been attached, even though no any proceeding either under section 67 or 73 or 74 has been invoked, or even no any inquiry has been initiated against that person and the person bank account has been attached, because just they find that they're suspicious about the account. Now, if you read section 83 of CGST Act, it specifies that if any inquiry has been initiated either in the section 60, 61, 67, 73 or 74, then they can they can attach the bank account, or they can take appropriate action to protect the revenue. But there are in number of cases we have come across that no any inquiry is initiated and the department attaches the bank account, and then you can definitely go to High Court and seek writ of mandamus by saying that this account has been attached without authority of law, or it has been attached without any inquiry, which is illegal and therefore required to issue appropriate writ. Similarly, goods have been detained or goods have been attached. So there are a number of examples where you find that there is requirement to issue the writ of mandamus. Similarly, in case of a writ of certiorari means instead of High Court giving order to the appropriate authority to do particular act in a particular manner, here the High Court itself pass appropriate order. Take an example of bank account attachment only. When they find that yes, bank account has been illegally attached, one, they can issue writ of mandamus by directing the officer to open the bank account. Or sometime in writ of certiorari, they quash and set aside the attachment order. So in writ of certiorari, is the High Court itself pass an order. For example, when you file the refund application, in terms of the provisions, if the refund order has not been passed within a period of 30 days or where they say that the order which has been passed by the adjudication authority it without jurisdiction. Then High Court has a power not to condone the delay, but High Court can adjudicate that matter and decide the issue. High Court has not said that first appellate authority has a power to condone the delay. High Court has not said that yes, we condone the delay and let appellate authority decide this issue now. No. What they say that the order per se which has been passed is an illegal order and therefore we pause the order and let the adjudication authority decide this issue afresh. So kindly appreciate that what is not permissible under the law, it is not permissible under Article 226 also, because High Court has also own limitations. High Court cannot go beyond the law point. And that is the whole reason that when any time limit has been prescribed under the statute, you have to strictly adhere with it. And I just give one more example of latest decision of Mohit Mineral only, not Mohit Mineral, Comsol Energy, where I appeared. This is a recent decision, because after Mohit Mineral decision on eligibility of refund on IGST paid on ocean freight, our client filed a refund claim. When the refund claim was filed, there was a delay, because if section 54 says that refund is to be filed within a period of 2 years from the relevant date. In that case, the refund claim was filed after a period of 2 years based on the Gujarat High Court order. The authority rejected the refund claim on the premise of the limitation. They say that yes, now time limit has been expired and therefore we cannot entertain the petition. We went to High Court. High Court allowed the refund claim on the premise that what High Court held that there is an unconstitutional, because the levy per se is unconstitutional. Once the levy is unconstitutional, then state or central cannot hold that tax with them as per Article 265. Because if any state or central has collected any tax without authority of law, then the statutory provision would not be applicable. Then the general time limit provided in the Limitation Act, that will be applicable. And hence, the High Court allowed the refund application even the period of more than 2 years. So this is in case of REIT and the High Court jurisdiction. Because why I took up this, no doubt I took half an hour, more than half an hour to discuss on this issue, because it's a absolutely untouched issue from the chartered accountant perspective. Because chartered accountant will always look into the, when any notice has been issued, they always look into that we need to file reply and we have to participate in the adjudication. But just I try to discuss on this point that there is no requirement, there is no compulsion that you have to adopt every time the statutory provisions. You have to look into the facts of the case, you have to look into the allegation, you have to look into this type of the litigation, and then can take the appropriate way. Suppose if you have not filed appeal with if the assessee has not filed appeal within a period of 90 days plus 30 days, then even though you go to the statutory authority, first appellate authority, they will not entertain your matter. And therefore, even though the remedy which you have adopted, it is a remedy, is an absolutely ineffective remedy. We will not be in position to give appropriate remedy to our client, and therefore, in that situation, it is always advisable to go for the go to the High Court. Now we go on the adjudication proceeding, and then subsequent to appellate proceedings. Now in adjudication proceeding, when we talk about adjudication, what is the meaning of adjudication proceedings? The adjudication proceeding starts from the assessment, and assessment has been defined under section 2 subsection 11 of the CGST Act. The definition starts with the means, and it also goes inclusive part. Therefore, it is an exhaustive meaning and simultaneously an inclusive meaning. So what it says that assessment means determination of tax liability, and then includes self-assessment, reassessment, provisional assessment, summary assessment, and base judgment assessment. If we see that assessment means determination of tax liability, what does it mean? It means that where any liability decides, then that later document or order would be considered as an assessment order, because we have come across this situation that many times the officer, whether take as a superintendent or take as a deputy commissioner, assistant commissioner, joint commissioner, additional commissioner, anyone, they write you later that you pay this amount towards so and so liability, and we find that there is no order. So can this later be considered as an assessment? Answer is yes, because when there is a liability has been decided, or when the liability has been crystallized in the letter, it would be considered as an assessment. Assessment does not mean that, as we understood in the past, that means if that is a self-assessment, it will be assessment. If it is a provisional assessment or reassessment or audit assessment, it is assessment. No, any liability has been decided, then it is considered as assessment, and you are aggrieved by that assessment, you need to challenge that order before the appellate authority. Second is a inclusive definition. It says that different type of assessment have been prescribed under the law, and that is like self-assessment, reassessment, provisional assessment, summary assessment, and base judgment assessment. Now, what is meaning of this type of assessments? I'm sure you are aware, but let me touch upon this issue. That self-assessment means when any person assess the tax liability under the return, under the periodical return filed by them, it is considered as a self-assessment. So when I file my return, I decide this is my liability, it will be considered as a self-assessment. If you pay full amount of liability, fine. If there is a short payment of tax, then ultimately it's considered as a, even though you admitted liability, but you have not paid it. So self-assessment is a meaning what you decide, what you have declared the liability of tax in the return, that is called as a self-assessment. Second is a scrutiny assessment, scrutiny of returns. So like you file the return, you assess the tax as per your best knowledge, but assessing officer finds that the amount which you have declared is not correct amount, or you wrongly availed some exemption, or you have wrongly filed the refund, or you have wrongly claimed the deductions, or you misclassified your product, either goods or services. If it is happen, then in that case they can go for, definitely they can very well go for the scrutiny of the return, and while carrying out the scrutiny of the return, they understand the correctness of the return, and they find that there is a discrepancies, then discrepancies will be issued in the form of notice, and that notice would be in the form of GST ASMT 10. Once the discrepancies has been issued, then the assessee has to give reply to sort out that discrepancies within a period of 30 days. If the assessing officer finds that yes, that discrepancies is fine, it is really there is a mistake on our part, they sort out and they communicate them, yes, we have accepted your reply, and based on that they issue the order, which would be in the form of GST ASMT 12. But if they find that we are not agreeing with your answer, with your reply, with your submissions, then within 30 days they may initiate some actions against you. What are the actions against you? Either they search your premises, or they may call for record for inspections, they may issue notice either under section 73, or they may issue notice under section 74. But does not mean that they are not happy with, or they are not happy with your reply, then they immediately pass order, you deposit this amount. That is not the case. So let's take a practical example, that as an assessee, you are doing some printing activities. As a printing activities, the liability of tax is a 12%, but you misclassified it and you have charged tax, and you have considered as an exempted activity. When department find based on your return, registration based on your return, and they find you are doing this particular activity where the liability of tax is 12%, then they ask you, they send you the notice in AST form 11. When they send you the notice, what you have to keep in mind, how to reply. See, reply would be in two parts. One is the legal part and second is a factual aspects. So you have to understand whether the notice has been issued from the perspective of the factual aspects or from the perspective of the legal answers. If the notice has been issued on from the factual aspects, don't touch upon the law, stick to that point and give only the factual submissions, because it is a notice. You have been called upon to clarify on particular points, and that is a way you have to be very careful that you need to answer to that point only. If they ask you for submission on factual aspect and you give legal answer, there is a mismatch, and you are going, they will definitely then initiate subsequent proceeding against you. If they have asked you for legal answer, give legal answer on legal answer, don't go on the factual aspects. Yes, but while carrying out a legal answer, you need to touch upon the factual aspect, you should touch upon, but your main stress, your focus would be on the legal points. Secondly, many times it happens there are 2 or 3 answers, and those 3 answers are without prejudice because either A or B or C. And for that purposes, I give example that your person carry out some job work, your client carry out some job work. Now job work per se, what you undertake the activity, that activity per se is exempted. You have not charge any service tax, or you have not charge any GST on that material when you supply, when you raise invoice to your principal supplier. But while filing the return showing nil liability, the assessing officer finds that no, here there is a liability of GST, you have to pay GST on your job charges. So they send you the notice that yes, we have come from your return that you undertake job work activity. Your job work activity is liable to pay tax at a 12%, but you have shown as a nil liability, sorry 18%, but you have shown as a nil liability. So kindly explain. Now what is the, you have to understand the crux of the notice. The notice speaks on the factual aspects because they are doubting about your job work activity. Why they are doubting about your job work activity? Because according to you, the activity which you undertake, there is no liability of GST, because as per exemption, so and so exemption, according to the department, your activity is liable for GST. So first there is a required to give clarity on the factual aspects. What is a factual aspect? It says that what I carry activity that is related to agriculture activity, agriculture product, like what I do it, I pick up cottons, out of cottons I just remove seeds, that cotton remains the cotton only, and therefore what activity I undertake on behalf of the principal supplier, there is no liability of GST because there is a specific exemption. So you have to explain your activity in detail, come out that yes, there is a clear understanding between you and assessing officer regarding this activity. Because once the activity is explained, it means that ultimately there is no any problem, because once factual aspect is understood, then law would definitely fall into place, because there is a specific exemption for activity, labor activity being undertaken or job work activity being undertaken for agriculture product or agriculture produce. Therefore, there is no liability of GST. Thereafter, once you explain your activity, and then you can definitely say that yes, by way of this exemption, by way of this exemption notification, your activity per se is exempted. Now you know that, assume for a minute that is a liability. So one, you have given answer. Now there is an alternate submissions. What is alternate submission? That suppose if there is a liability of GST, then it would not be 12%, it would be 5%. There's alternate submission if it is available. Third alternate submission is that assume for a minute, yes, I'm liable. Then there is a revenue neutrality for the reason that whatever GST I paid, my principal supplier would have availed the credit, and therefore there is no loss to the government. Now these are three alternate options available with you. So while replying to this notice, you have to give answer to all three alternative submissions. You should not go on that aspect that only on the first point. Yes, my first point is very super point and I'll be through out of this. Yes, it is a very good point, but always try to alternate make submissions. What is going to happen? Because when you make alternate submission and the assessing officer has not accepted your primary submission, when you go in appeal, if you have taken alternate submission, then the chances seems to be there that you will lose on the primary submission, but you may succeed on alternate submissions. And therefore, while drafting reply, you have to be very careful that whatever the points are available under the law, under this allegation, kindly jot down all these points. There is no requirement to give detailed reply, but at least there should be the point put into the reply. And that is where actually our, as a professional person, we should focus that not only the allegation, not only the point which has been alleged to cover up, but whatever alternate submission in respect of alleged points, that has to be also incorporated into this aspect. Then secondly is respect of the provisional assessment. Many times you find that assessee approach to you, client approach to you, and you have doubt whether I should advise the client to take X value, Y value, or classify the product under A or classify under product B. So for that purposes, there is a concept called provisional assessment. Now, provisional assessment under the GST has been brought only for two purposes: when a person has a doubt about the value or about the rate or classification of the product. So in that situation, you can invoke for a provisional assessment. Now in provisional assessment, when you have a issue, you can very well write a letter to the assessing officer under GST on the form called GST ASMT 1 by saying that I manufacture so and so product, or I supply so and so product, or I supply so and so services. According to me, it would be classifiable under A. And therefore, and there will be the chances that it may be classifiable under B. I have doubt about it, so kindly consider my they kindly allow me to provisionally assess my supply and thereafter pass appropriate order. So once you do it, then the officer may issue the notice that is in the appropriate form GST ASMT 02. In notice, when they issue the notice, they say that yes, they have on the point what they have doubt about it, that according to them it may be classified as so and so, it may be so and so. They may call for further documents. Please furnish so and so document in support of your case to classify under A or to classify under B. Once it is done, then you have to give reply again in the particular form that is called GST ASMT 3. So friends, again, kindly note here that whenever you file reply, please your reply should be exhaustive. Reply should be exhaustive, meaning thereby that you have to cover up all your submissions, you have to cover up all your alternate submissions, you have to be very focused that what you are looking for, you should be focused on that point only, and whatever alternate submissions or whatever factual aspect would be covered under the reply, but limited to your point only, not beyond it. And once you file the reply, then within 90 days from the filing of the reply, they would carry out the provisional assessment. 90 days, sorry, from the date of application, they carry out the provisional assessment. While carrying out provisional assessment, what they would do it, if they find that in respect of there is a question of value, then they consider the value and what will be the maximum liability. They may say that whatever liability you determine, and whatever the liability, provisional liability, and whatever the difference amount kindly give the bond along with the security. And whenever they ask for the security, there would be a security in the form that the security would be maximum in the form of 25% of the differential amount of the tax. So let's take an example. Suppose you are providing chartered accountant services. Now simultaneously you also provide the legal services. You have doubt whether legal services should also be charged to GST or not, like as a service tax or not. And therefore you submit the reply, submit the notice. You receive the notice. Based on that, you submit the reply, and thereafter the department finds that if you consider legal service, what will be the maximum liability? They consider yes, your liability would be 1 lakh rupees additional liability. Then they would ask you to furnish the bond of rupees 1 lakh, and also give the security 25% of your 1 lakh rupees. And that form and bond is required to be furnished in the particular form. And once it is done, then they initiate the action for the carry out the final assessment. There is a different time frame is given. Suppose you file this notice to the office, assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner, then they have to carry out this final assessment within a period of 6 months from the provisional assessment order. If the assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner finds that oh, no, I'm not in position to carry out this assessment within a period of 6 months. Let's take an example of because of present COVID situation. Then they have to take approval from the additional commissioner or joint commissioner to allow them to carry out this final assessment for a further period of extension of 6 months. Even though they find that this is also not sufficient time, then the assistant commissioner, deputy commissioner approach to the commissioner and seek extension of time limit of 4 years. Once the assessment is carried out, then the final assessment order will be issued, and the final assessment order would be issued in GST SMT 07. Once the assessment order is issued, there will be two circumstances. Either there will be shortfall or there will be excess amount of the tax which you have ascertained. So if there is a shortfall, you are liable to pay interest. You are liable to pay that tax, shortfall amount of the tax along with the interest liability. Kindly note here, the interest liability would start from your due date of that liability of tax. So suppose you are filing return of a month of May by 20th June, and you are liable to pay tax by 20th June. In that situation, if the assessment has been carried out 2023 or 2022, then you are liable to pay interest from the 20th June up to the date of the payment. That means in 22. But in the reverse situation, suppose if there is a refund, then refund would be granted not from the date when you actually excess amount of the tax paid, but it will be granted after 60 days. If the refund is not given within a 60 days from the final assessment, then the interest will be granted from the 61 days. And once this assessment is done, then whatever the bond and security you furnished, those will be returned in appropriate format. We go now next steps. That next step is in respect of the assessment. Again, assessment actually for the non-filer of the returns. So everyone has to file return within the time frame. If person fail to file return within the time frame, then the assessing officer may issue the notice by saying that kindly you file return within a period of 15 days from the receipt of this notice. Even though you fail to file this return within a 15 days, then the assessing officer, they carry out assessment by themselves based on the base judgment and availability of the documents. So take an example that the return has not been filed. Now the assessing officer has doubt about the chargeability of tax. So what they do that in last 10 months, you file return by declaring or disclosing X amount as a taxable supply. You have not filed a return for the 12th month. So based on that, for the 12th month, they carry out computation, average turnover, average liability of tax, and they issue the order. The order will be issued under Form GST ASMT 30, That means you have to understood when the order has been issued assessment 13, that means it is a assessment for the purpose of for those assessors who have not filed the returns. Simultaneously, they also issue the summary order under GST DRC 07. Once it is done, then you can definitely that assessor can can see this document from online portal, and if they find that, oh, it has been wrongly assessed, there was no my liability in the month of 12, and I really failed to give answer to the assessing officer against this notice issued for filing the return, then within 30 days he filed appropriate returns declaring correct amount of the tax. Once they file the return, then the assessment order which has been passed under ASMT 13, it will be considered as automatically quashed. There is no requirement to challenge that order. It will be considered as a quashed. Once it is quashed, then assessing officer either accepts your liability or they says, no, I'm not agreeing with that. If they don't agree with that, they again issue the notice and ultimately the appropriate order will be passed. But kindly not. In this case, your liability of interest and the penalty would not be satisfied, because there will be liability of late fee payment, there will be liability of interest for your late payment of liability of the tax. Next provision is for unregistered person, that is under section 63. Many times you see that even the person is liable to get registered, they did not register themselves and provide taxable supply without charging GST. So in that case, the assessing officer has a power to carry out the assessment for unregistered persons. And I give best example. I'm sure that so many clients received notices based on the form 26AS filed by the respective persons for TDS. Now, based on the TDS, the service tax department, now GST department, they ascertain that this is if that person has a particular 26 income and simultaneously he has not registered themselves, that means there is a liability of tax. In that case, they issue the assessment order. They ask that person, yes, that ultimately you yourself, even though required to be registered under so and so category, you have not registered yourself, or even though you were registered, if you already surrender your registration, but based on form number 26AS, we find that you have taxable supplies. Why don't we charge GST on this income? And since you are unregistered, why you are not forcing you to take registration? Why we should not force you to file returns? And why should we not charge late fee payment for not filing a return, late fee penalty for not pay tax in the time? Why should we not carry out all this assessing or proceeding against you? In that case, if that is done, first notice will be issued under ASMT 14, and they put out all the grounds. Like you have seen this type of notices under the service tax, they can carry out the same way under GST under ASMT 14, and they also put the summary on under GST DRC 1. You have to reply within 15 days. If the 15 days reply has not been done, then order will be passed and simultaneously the DRC 01 will also be issued. So kindly note that why we are discussing all these type of notices and all this, because we have to tell to the client, if any such type of notice is issued, you have to be very alert, because nowadays we have come across situation because everything, majority things now are routed through online portal. Many times assessee, they never look into this GST portal, and after a period of 1 month, 2 months, they come to know that there is a huge liability and it was unnoticed. And therefore, we have to tell to the client, kindly look into your GST portal regularly, see that nothing is missed out, and if you require any services, yes, we are available, and we can very well provide you the services, subject to at least you draw attention to particular notice to us. If we are not aware about it, we are not in position to give answer to the client, and therefore everything is a time bound program. And when there is a time bound, and if it is not available on the GST portal, or means it is available on GST portal but it is unnoticed, then unnecessary client would face consequences. And that is the whole reason when you go for registration, when our client go for registration, and when we give mobile number, we have to be very careful for giving mobile number as well as email ID, because all these correspondence are simultaneously also informed by email as well as mobile number. So if it is given if a responsible person's cell number and email IDs are given, then ultimately if that person receives such alert, he may simultaneously take appropriate action by themselves or by through the through us. So that is the reason that ultimately two things portal are required to be looked into on regular basis, and mobile number and email IDs are to be uploaded of the concerned responsible person. Next is a summary assessment in special cases. What is happened that in some time department carried out the search and they find that yes, this person has not supplied the goods because he is a recipient. Like take an example of steel products. He is not a manufacturer. He knows that this product is not being manufactured by them. So, and it is also found that it is unaccounted. So what they will do it? Yes, it is found unaccounted. Since it is not supplied, they can't demand tax from them. But tax can be demanded from the supplier. The department may make inquiry with this supplier, with this person, and find out who is the supplier. If this person says that sorry, I don't know, or I received these goods on cash, and therefore I'm not aware about the supplier, then the department presumes that the person from whom we find possession of these goods would be considered as a supplier, and they may charge tax from that concerned persons. So for that purposes, the summary assessment has been issued, and they say that it is not a year-wise periodical assessment. It is a summary assessment for particular transactions that they find that yes, this transaction is required to be taxed. It appears that it is untaxed, and therefore they carry out the assessment. And I'm just not going into the aspect regarding that form and everything, because that is available in the available, and it's same like as what we discussed earlier. When they have to issue notice, there will be particular form. When we have to file reply, there will be particular form. When the order is issued, then there is a particular form. So in those cases, it will be done. Now next proceeding is a notice, and this is very important notice, section 73 and 74 notices, because our half of the practices would work on these notices 73 and 74. Well, what is 73 and 74? When a person has not paid tax, or there is a short payment of tax, or there is an erroneous refund granted to that person, or wrongly avail the credit, or misutilize the fund, or any of the activity where it prejudices to the revenue, in that case, the notice will be issued for recovery of this short payment of tax or erroneous refund granted. There are second provision of section 74. It is also similar provisions. When there is short payment of tax or non-payment of tax, wrongly avail, or wrongly utilize ITC, in that case also notice can be issued under section 74. But what is the difference between these two provisions? 73 can be invoked in a case where there is no mala fide intention on the part of the assessee to evade the tax or to wrongly avail the credit. In that case, 73 will be invoked. But if there is a mala fide intention, there is a suppression of facts, there is a fraud, there is a willful misstatement, in that case, the notice will be issued under section 74. Why there are two different provisions? Because there are one is the less stringent provision, another is the more stringent provisions. If person wants to, if the department decides that I want to invoke prosecution, notice will be issued under section 74. But if notice is issued under section 73, prosecution will never be launched. So there is a time limit also. In case of the time limit, 73 is a less time limit. In 74, there is a more time limit prescribed for issuance of the notice. If you see, recollect, under the Excise Act, under the Fire Service Tax, there was a time limit provided. the time limit was provided that ultimately in the case of short payment of tax and there was no mala fide intention, then 2-year time limit would be given for issuance of the notice. And in case of there is a mala fide intention, that 5 years would be given for issuance of the notice. But under the GST, time limit has not been prescribed. Outer time limit has not been prescribed for the issuance of the notice, but outer time limit has been prescribed for the issuance of the order. I give let understanding that what the law says that order is to be passed within 3 years from the due date for furnishing of annual return for which the SOCOS will be issued. So take example, if for financial year 2017 and 18, the due date for filing of the return, you know that it was extended from time to time, and it was lastly said that is the 31st January 2020 would be considered as a due date for filing annual return. Now, what law says that if the notice has been issued under section 73, then the order will be passed within 3 years from the due date of the filing of the annual return. So order can be passed by 31st January 2023. That is the outer time limit by which the order will be passed. If this date is missed, that means 31st January 2023 is missed, then that day has gone and no order can be passed. Now, what law says that for this or no periodical order, if notice is required to be issued, then law says that the notice has to be issued at least prior to 3 months from the date of passing this order under the section 73. So meaning thereby, if the order is required to be passed by 31st January 2023, the notice has to be issued at least prior to 3 months from 31st January 2023. That means notice has to be issued on 31st October 2022. No notice can be issued after 31st October 2022. If notice has been issued after 2022, it may be considered as a wrong notice and it is required to be, it will be quashed. Similarly, in the case of section 74, instead of 3 years, there is a time limit of the 5 years. Nothing, there is no change otherwise, but time limit is 5 years is given. So if you see effectively, is the 5 limit is a just misnomer, but if you see is an outer time limit, because even though you miss something, department can record this even amount even after a period of 6 years, because 5 years is a from due date of annual return, and you know the annual return has been extended from time to time, and therefore I'm not sure when the clock will close or clock will stop, and therefore now if there is a short payment, I'm sure that person need to be paid. Now, what are the difference between these two, again 73 and 74 from the perspective of the penalty? Because tax is to be paid, no doubt. Once the notice is issued, you file reply. After reply, the case will be adjudicated. Once the case is adjudicated, then there is a different consequences. But in case person find that yes, there is my fault and I did not pay tax on time, I need to pay it. So if that notice has been issued, if a person paid the amount of tax and outstanding amount of the interest before issuance of SOCOS notice under 73, if there is no charge of fraud, willful statement or anything, then there is no liability of penalty. So like for example, I give a simple way that intimation has been sent to you to call for supply the documents or carry out the inspection. And you find that yes, there is a liability of tax. You pay tax along with the interest, and then there won't be any further SOCOS notice, no any liability of the penalty. But if you wait for the SOCOS notice and SOCOS has been issued under section 73, then the maximum penalty would be 10% amount of the tax or 10,000, whichever is higher. So they may collect, or you may liable to pay tax at 10% under 73 because there was no any fraud or there was no mala fide intention on your part. But if there is a mala fide intention on your part, then even though you pay tax interest before issuance of SOCOS notice and they find that there is a mala fide intention, they definitely issue the SOCOS notice under 74. And that time, if you pay 15% of the tax amount, even along with at the time of by depositing tax, even before issuance of SOCOS notice, no SOCOS will be issued to you. I put in different way. that I know that my liability, even though I deliberately did not pay tax, the tax liability was 100 rupees. And when I come to know department initiate inquiry, immediately I paid tax 100 rupees, outstanding amount of the interest, and 15% of tax amount, that means 15 rupees as a penalty, then department will not issue the show cause notice. But if department has issued the show cause notice under 74, then if within 30 days, if I deposit the tax amount, interest amount, and the penalty, which is equal to 25% of the tax amount within 30 days, then the show cause notice will be dropped and no any further proceeding would be done. But if I wait for the order, and order is passed, then also I have one more opportunity, that if I pay the amount of tax, interest, and penalty within 30 days from the date of the issuance of the order or from the date of receipt of the order, then again, yes, there would be maximum 50% amount of the penalty. No any further penalty would be imposed. But if I miss to pay even this amount of the penalty, 50% within 30 days, 30 days have gone, then you have no option but to pay 100% amount of the penalty amount. Now, this situation would not be applicable in the case of self-assessed tax. So, either take 73 or 74. You have determined your tax liability and the return. You have not paid that amount. You have to pay that amount of tax along with the interest, and there would be minimum penalty of 10%. You would not get any benefit of the penalty, reduction of the penalty. Now, there are some points which you have to keep in mind, that once you deposit the penalty, does not mean that you are absolved from the liability of the prosecution. The prosecution can be launched if the notice has been issued under section 74. And therefore, I say that if you know that yes, there is a liability of tax, and if you pay this amount before issuance of show cause notice, chances seem to be meager for invocation of prosecution, because there is no show cause notice. Once there is no show cause notice, then there won't be any prosecution. Secondly, as we discussed, that if there is suppression, mala fide intention, fraud, collusion, willful misstatement, then 74 can be invoked. Now they define what is meaning of suppression, because this suppression was not defined earlier under the earlier law. Now they declare, yes, what is meaning of suppression? They say suppression means non-declaration of facts or information which a taxable person is required to declare in the return, statement, report, or document furnished under the act or rules made thereunder, or failure to furnish any information on being asked for in writing by the officers. So take example that while you file either GSTR 1 or GSTR 3B or annual return, you require to declare some information. You fail to declare that amount, or you just missed out some supply from the return. In that situation, it can be considered as a suppression. But you disclose everything. Like you also sought, okay, yes, I'm going to claim exemption under this notification. You also claim, you also declared the exemption amount. You also declared that all the details, classification code and everything. That is not considered as a suppression. Then, if there is a short payment of tax, they have to invoke they have to issue the notice under section 73. Secondly, once they say that once the notice has been considered as a closed, because if you pay 10% amount of the tax liability as a penalty, or 15%, 25%, 50% of the penalty, in that case, the show cause charges made in the show cause will be considered concluded, or notice proceeding will be concluded. Once it is concluded, then it will be concluded from all the perspective, meaning thereby no any other penalty except 73 or 74 will be imposed. Secondly, there are co-notices also. So once the proceeding is concluded against the main party, against the main noticee, it will be considered as that it would be concluded for all other parties also. Now there is a time limit, as we discussed, for issuance of the notice also, and there is a time limit for issuance of the order also. But that proceeding, if has been stayed by the appellate authority or by the High Court or by the Supreme Court, then whatever the time limit has been consumed, those time limit would not be computed while computing the period of 2 years, 3 years, or the 5 years. Secondly, as we discussed that earlier, that when the show cause is issued, they have to put proper charges, proper okay, these are the charges, these are the allegations against you. Based on that, they decide whether notice will be issued under 73 or 74. Many times what happened, that notice has been issued under 74 by considering this is a suppression of facts. If that order is challenged further and tribunal or appellate authority or tribunal or high court finds that there was no suppression of fact, so earlier what was notice issued under 74, if it has been quashed, then proceeding under 73 cannot be invoked because the no notice has been invoked, issued under 73. To overcome of that situation, the law says that if the proceeding under 74, that means proceeding for invocation of larger period has been dropped, then it will be considered as a proceeding under section 73, and within time limit they can definitely invoke the demand the amount. Now another proceeding is that in case the appellate authority or second appellate authority remanded the matter, then also the order is required to be passed by the adjudication authority within a period of 2 years from the communication of the remand order. If though any order has been passed within a period of 2 years from the date of the remand, then no any order can be passed by this adjudication authority. And friends, why I'm emphasizing on this time limit everything, because it's a important aspect. No any steps can be further taken after this limitation, and therefore when we receive any notice, we have to also look into that whether notice has been issued within time limit or not, whether the notice has been issued by the appropriate authority or not, whether notice has been issued in the appropriate section or not, and what are the requirement of those provisions. So if you see all these issues, then you can definitely come to the conclusion this is all points are in proper perspective. So you need to give answer then on the merit of the case or not. Then you can very well challenge on the preliminary objection. You can raise preliminary objection before the appellate authority or before the high court or before the appropriate authority that this is wrong. Now, once the notice has been issued, many times the issue arises that I have some personal difficulty. Can I seek adjournment? Answer is yes. You can seek adjournment, but law provides that you will not be granted more than 3 times. You will not be granted adjournment for more than 3 times. So law itself says that you can seek maximum adjournment for 3 times. But for seeking adjournment, you have to write a letter. It is not like as a ipso facto, or it is not like as a by default that you first time notice has been issued, you have not appeared, and therefore second time opportunity will be given. No, it depends on officer to officer. If some officers are lenient, or some officer believe that let we want to do justice, or some officer that let we give opportunity one more time, then they issue the notice. But if no any reply has been given from our side for seeking adjournment to the notice hearing notice, then you may invite the risk to pass ex parte order by the proper officers. Then next point, you have to see that whatever the order is passed, whether that order has been passed based on the allegation made in the show cause notice or not. Because the order is to be strict to the facts and allegations level in the notice. They cannot go beyond that amount, and therefore you have to be very careful on this aspect. Interest is a consequence. Earlier, what used to happen under excise and service tax, even though demand has been made, but if there is no proposal of interest, then they cannot demand the interest amount. And therefore, they says that interest amount also you require to separate show cause notice, you require to issue the separate show cause notice. Now that time, that situation has gone under the GST. GST says that once there is a demand, then there is a interest liability is a consequence. So even though show cause notice is silent on the aspect of demanding interest, but if there is a liability of interest, you have to pay the interest. And while passing the adjudication order, because we have discussed while issuance of the notice, whatever the time limit consumed by the High Court or Tribunal or Supreme Court, that would be excluded. Similarly, in case of the order also, whatever the time limit consumed, that would be excluded while computing the time limit of 3 years or 5 years for passing the order. In case of amount, once the order has been passed, then this order, whatever the amount required to be, whatever the amount confirmed in the order, that you know that either if the appeal is not filed, then they can very well recover the amount. Under the VAT regime, you know that once the assessment order is passed, simultaneous recovery notice is issued, and they say if you don't deposit this amount within 30 days, you are they can initiate recovery action against the assessee. In GST law, it is beautifully mentioned, but this is a really nice provision that once the order is passed, then the department would not take any action within a period of 3 months for recovery of this amount, unless the department finds that if we don't recover this amount within a period of 3 months, then they are inviting the risk of the, they are inviting, then they will be prejudice to the revenue, or they may invite the risk or losing of this. They are inviting the risk of losing the revenue. In that situation, they can very well recover this amount even prior to 3 months. But otherwise, it would be considered as a stay for next 3 months from the date of the receipt of the order. One more aspect is regarding the tax. See, many times we have come across the point that assessee is that no doubt I collected tax from the assessee, but my activity per se is exempted, or I don't require to pay tax. Whether do I need to deposit this tax amount from the government in the government? Answer is yes, because once you show the amount of GST separately in the invoice, irrespective of the situation, whether there is a liability or not, you have to deposit this amount of tax with the government, because you are recovering this amount from your recipient of goods or supplier as a custodian or as a trustee. You don't have right over this money, because government has provided machinery to recover this amount through you, through the supplier, and in some time through the recipient in the case of reverse charge mechanism, liability of tax arises. So you cannot recover this amount. Now, no any time limit has been prescribed under this section 76 to recover this amount. So question arises whether the government can indefinite period of time they can issue the notice even after 5 years, 10 years, 12 years. Answer is no. There should be some reasonable time limit. And in respect of reasonable time limit, what it provides that reasonable time limit as per the precedents available under the various law. It says that what is the maximum time limit provided under the statute. So in our case, GST, the maximum time limit is of 5 years. So definitely government can issue the notice within 5 years and decide the recover the amount. And no doubt this amount cannot be recovered without granting a purchase of hearing, and that amount has to be, and the order is to be passed within a period of 1 year. So this is the case of the adjudication, assessment, and the adjudication. Because what we recover, what we have seen, if you see, we have seen the assessment. There are different type of assessments. Thereafter, we have seen the adjudication, and where that adjudication would normally take place in the either section 73 and 74. The order will be passed in the section 75. Now, next provision is the appeals. No doubt, first appellate authorities are available. Second is not yet available. First appellate authority is available, and there is a here once the assessment order has been passed, then person whoever is aggrieved, whether by assessee or by the revenue, who is aggrieved, they can very well challenge the appeal before the first appellate authority. There is some time limit prescribed. There is a time limit prescribed for the submission of certified copy. You have to make some mandatory pre-deposit. There are something need to be done, nothing to be done. So there are various points to be kept in mind while filing the appeal before the first appellate authority. You know that there is a proper format prescribed for filing the appeal, and that form is a APL 01. And participants, I may say that we have come across various appeals drafted by various consultants, including chartered accountants and advocates. When they prefer appeal, they don't put all the facts into the appeal, and as well as the grounds. Many times they even don't deal the grounds regarding the penalty. Many times they don't deal the ground regarding the liability of interest also. So while pointing out, while drafting the appeal, what you have to keep in mind, no doubt that form is prescribed, you definitely fill up the form. But apart from form, when you put the facts, statement of facts, those statement of facts to start what the assessee does, what is their business, what is their registration number, what is their activity, what is their allegations, what is your submission, what the order has been passed, and against that order, what the points you are going to be argued. So all these points you have to put in the number wise. So when you put facts, you have to put numeric wise number, because this has not been mentioned, but always it happen that, or it is always advisable that when you file your appeal should be in 3 parts. First would be the statement of facts, 2 would be the ground, and 3rd would be the prayer. So when you put statement of facts, as I discussed, you have to start from the registration up to the order, you have to put into the factual aspects. Regarding ground, as we discussed, while drafting the grounds, first you have to see that what the adjudication authority held against you. You have to jot down the point that adjudication authority held against me, or assessment proceeding held against me on those 5 points. Once it is decided in those 5 points it is held against me, then you have to see that what are the submission against each points, and you have to point out in the grounds. You have to also deal with the point on the interest and the penalty. And thereafter, 3rd would be a prayer. What will your prayer? Your one prayer would be the cost and set aside the assessment order. Second prayer would be always seek consequence of that order, because you refund, or whatever the other prayers are there, you have to incorporate into the prayer. Because many times I have seen that people may not put people don't put their proper facts in the statement of facts. Just they put in the 5 lines and close the appeal. They don't put all the grounds. They don't even narrate the statutory provisions also in the appeal. And therefore, it is advisable to even put statutory provisions also, as well as decisions what you are going to refer to into the memo of appeal. Once it is done, then you should file the appeal. Now, what is the time limit? What it says that these appeals can be filed against the any assessment, any order passed by the adjudication authority. Now, what is meaning of adjudication authority? It has been defined. The adjudication authority means any order or decision passed by any authority except Central Board of Indirect Taxes, Revisional Authority, Appellate Advance Ruling Authority, or NAA, that means National Anti-Profiteering Activity, or any other authority other than adjudication authority. You cannot prefer the appeal. Appeal can be preferred against the order passed by the adjudication authority. The appeal is to be preferred within a period of 3 months from the date of communication of the order. Now, before whom the appeal is to be preferred? If the order has been passed by the officer below the rank of the Joint Commissioner or the Additional Commissioner, then first appellate authority would lie before the Joint Commissioner or Additional Commissioner appeal. In case the order has been passed by Additional Commissioner or Joint Commissioner, then appeal would lie before the Commissioner appeal. Similar provision would be applicable for revenue also. If revenue also finds that yes, they are aggrieved by some portion of the assessment order, or they are aggrieved by the order, they can very well prefer the appeal, and they are also required to prefer appeal of within a period of 6 months instead of the 3 months which is given to the assessee. If there is a delay in filing appeal, yes, the appellate authority has power to condone the delay, but not beyond the period of 1 month. There is a compulsion pre-deposit. There are 2 types. Once the order is passed, there are 2 types of liability. One is the admitted liability, and second is a disputed liability. In case of admitted liability, you have to pay in tax, interest, penalty, everything. But in the case of the disputed liability, you have to pay maximum 10% amount of the tax liability, not interest and penalty, only the tax liability, and that is maximum up to 25 crores. And once you deposit this amount, then there won't be any further recovery action, because there is a mandatory pre-deposit given here. Like under VAT, there was no mandatory pre-deposit earlier, but now under GST, there is a mandatory pre-deposit. Along with the appeal, you have to file a certified copy of the order. And kindly just keep in mind what law says that you have to annex certified copy of the order with the appeal. If you are not annexed with the appeal, then you are given liberty to file the certified copy of the order within a period of 7 days from the filing of the appeal. And if you file the certified copy of the order within a period of 7 days, then your original date when you originally preferred the appeal, that would be date considered as a filing of the appeal. But if you miss to file certified copy of the order within a period of 7 days, then on the date when you submit the certified copy of the order, that date would be considered as a date of filing of the appeal. So now what is going to be happen? Take that you prefer appeal on the last date, that means 60 days. You have not submitted certified copy of the order, and you submit certified copy of the after 40 days. So time limit of 30 days, which is condonable delay, it has gone, and therefore your appeal, even though you file on the last day of the filing of the appeal, but certified copy has been submitted after 90 days, and therefore it is considered you have not filed an appeal, or you have filed appeal beyond the period of limitation, which even can't be condoned by the appellate authority or high court, and therefore it is considered you are remediless. And therefore, please keep in mind, when you file appeal, please ask the client either submit original copy of the order so that you can submit that order, or get the certified copy of the order. Who can certify the copy of the order? It has been prescribed, either the advocate or chartered accountant or consultant who appears, they can certify that order, or by the order officer who has issued the order, they can certify the order. Here also you cannot seek more than 3 times of the adjournment. There is one more interesting point here, that many times you find that when you appear before the authority and then find that it is some of the grounds which is required to be taken, those grounds have not been taken. In that case, you can very well prefer application seeking additional grounds, and that additional ground can be entertained by the officer by the first appellate authority based on the availability of the based on the submissions. So if it is a legal ground, they will very well allow it. But suppose if there is a factual aspect which has not been argued at the time of the adjudication authority, they may not allow you that additional ground into the appeal, for the reason that because of negligence of the assessee, this ground has not been taken. So I will not allow this at the time of the first appellate authority. And that's the reason we always suggest to the client that your reply to the show cause notice is a pillar or is a foundation. So foundation should cover all the points, and it should be well drafted. And therefore, when you go in appeal, the appellate authority would not say that this point was not taken up by you at the time of filing of the reply. And therefore, you have to be very careful while drafting reply to the show cause notice, because it is your foundation. And if those points have not been taken up, you can very well take up by filing the additional application for additional ground. And when you file application for additional ground, it is a discretion upon the adjudication authority either to accept or reject it. Secondly is that appellate authority, he has a power either to confirm the order, modify the order, or reject the order, but it does not have power to remand this matter back to the adjudication authority. So kindly note, the first appellate authority has to decide the matter based on the factual aspect and legal points available with them, but he cannot send matter back to the adjudication authority by saying that kindly consider this point. Earlier, there was under service tax, there was similar provision, and Gujarat High Court in the case of medical lab held that annul means what? That means quash and set aside. And once it quashed, then they can very well remand the matter. But under GST, there is a categorically provision that appellate authority has no power to remand the matter, and therefore now order will not be remanded. And that's the more reason that you should incorporate all the factual aspects and legal submissions while drafting the appeal. If there is a subsequent show cause notice, in case of that, while deciding the appeal, if the appellate authority decides that some of the points are required to be considered by adjudication authority, it has not been considered, then they can not by way of order in the order, but by a separate order, direct the authority to issue the show cause notice separately and pass the order. Now, this entire exercise is required to be done within a period of 1 year. Now, there is a revisional authority. now because of the time is short, so I'll not go into detail. But revisional authority, when any officer, commissioner, or finds that the order passed by the lower authority is not a proper order, then on his request, or he can direct the subordinate authority to file a revision application before the revisionary authorities. And in that situation, revisionary authority finds decide the order, and based on that there is a time limit and all this, so we are not just skipping it. There is another provision, just I'm no doubt not touching up, but just I'm not going to detail of this aspect, but just I'll touch upon the 2-3 legal points. Appellate tribunal, because it has not been yet constituted. There will be two tribunals in two type of tribunal. One is the national tribunal and second is the state tribunal. National tribunal would again consider would have a national bench at Delhi, and there would be different type of tribunal available in the regional office, in the regional places. So like take an example, state custom excise service tax appellate tribunal, they are sitting in Delhi and they have various benches: Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Mumbai, Delhi. Similarly, in the case of the tribunal also, national bench, GST national bench, there will be one bench in Delhi and other benches would be located in the big major cities. Similarly, in the case of state tribunal, there would be one bench at state place, major, and other would be located in the different big cities. So like VAT tribunal. So VAT tribunal is located in Ahmedabad, but I'm sure that there are two different types of benches under the state. What is the difference between national bench and state bench? Only one aspect, that national bench would be heard those matter where the issue pertaining to place of supply is involved. So other than place of supply, it would be heard by the state bench. That's all. I'm not going to other aspect regarding, there are so many points regarding pre-deposit, regarding memorandum of cross objection, filing appeal, because the tribunal has not been constituted now. Only one point I would like to touch again more on the tribunal, that today tribunal has not been constituted. So what is the happen after order passed by the first appellate authority? What law says that in case if any person is aggrieved by the first appellate authority, they can very well file appeal from after the incorporation of the tribunal or after the constitution of the tribunal. So in respect of limitation, they say that on the date when tribunal constitutes, that time the limitation period would start. So even the first appellate authority pass an order, you have two options: either challenge that order before the High Court, or if you find that yes, it is a demand, I don't want to go for expedite of the adjudication or deciding the liability, let it lie in the storage room. Then you can wait when the tribunal constitutes. That time your time limit for filing the appeal would starts.
Chalo di mo live pa? Power live?
Power live.
So yeah.
Pwede ko yung sa akin yung check ko rin. Kung kawin yung check ko, channel rin yung mobile. Kung sabi ko lang.
Okay, I think Amit Bhai has some. I think from Amit Bhai. So.
That's the last phone lagan, my phone.
Yeah. Next is regarding High Court and Supreme Court. In case of the High Court, again the order passed by the state tribunal. State tribunal appeal would lie before the High Court within 180 days. Just I'm not going into. Only the question is that if the issue is decided by the central tribunal, that means regarding the place of supply, then appeal would lie before the Supreme Court, or otherwise the appeal would lie before the state before the High Court. And if there are some cases related, there are some issues where it is not appealable order. I would say that in case if any issue or any order passed by the higher authority regarding transfer of case one from one officer to another officer, then it is not an appealable order. Similarly, if any order has been passed for sanctioning the prosecution, it is not a appealable order. If the order has been passed regarding seizure or retention of the book of account, it is not an appealable order, but you can very well challenge those orders before the High Court. So let me now conclude it here because it is now 7, and I'll just leave some part for the question answer, so that if anyone has a question, it can be discuss on those points.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If anybody had a question, please ask the question.
Sir, one or two questions are there in chat box, sir.
Yeah, just I'm looking first question. Ramesh bhai asked one question.
Yeah.
Kindly explain applicability of order of the Supreme Court in suo motu writ petition, civil number so and so for GST refund application, whether application for financial year 2000 made on 2000 can be allowed on ITC. Answer is yes, because if you see the what Supreme Court said in 3 of 2020 and latest order passed in a order, they say that any proceeding where the time limit has been prescribed, if during that time the proceeding cannot be initiated or cannot be done, then time limit can be extended. So in respect of the financial year 2018 and 19, for accumulator of ITC on export, the refund claim could have been filed within a period of 2 years. Now in that situation, if your time limit falls from 15 March to 2020 onwards, then you can very well challenge that you can file refund claim before the authority by citing the decision of the Supreme Court. Because so and so period, I could not file the refund application. Now I'm filing the refund application.
So that limit will be extension of time limit advantage will be available for filing of appeal also.
Filing of appeal, refund, everything. But only the condition is that the due date should fall from 15 March 2020 onwards.
Sir, another question is from my side.
Yes.
Sir, right now the department is issuing the notices for the interest notices for payment of interest. So, sir, in certain cases, what happens, sir? We have already paid the tax in time. Around 90%, 95% of the tax had been paid. But due to certain reasons, sir, some part of the this tax was not paid, and the return was delayed by, for example, couple of weeks or so. When the party received that particular amount, so we advised them that at the moment you are receiving the tax, at least you pay that much amount. Otherwise, what will happen, sir? They are just using that amount, and at the last, they are having a very huge amount to pay. Around 9 to 10, 20 lakhs they have to pay every month. So that when they go on receiving, they just go on using, then at last they get stuck up due to the lack of fund. So sir, we advise the moment you are receiving, just you go on paying. So what happens, sir, 95% or so the tax they have already paid, but the 10%, 5% tax had been paid at last, and along with penalty, we filed the return. But now the department has issued the notice for the whole amount of tax had not been paid, and they are charging interest on the whole amount, even after we paid just 10% of the amount late. So, sir, we argued with the department, and one judgment from Honorable Gujarat High Court is also quoted to them. But they said there is no official communication from our department to us, so we cannot consider this judgment or like that, sir. So, what should be done for this?
See, first department, they act as per their own wishes. When they want to give benefit, they don't see whether there is any instruction from the higher officer or not. But they don't want to extend the benefit. In that situation, they always put burden on others. And therefore, I say that simple way. If you see section 50, it says that when the interest liability is on the outstanding amount of the liability. So in your case, the liability of interest arises only on the 10%, and that is again from the due date up to the date of the payment. Whatever the amount of whatever the payment you made in between, on those cases, the interest clock will stop and there is no further liability. Now, if department does not accept the High Court order, and since they have not received the instruction from our authority, you can very well say that let them pass order, appropriate order, and you can take that order before the higher authority. For the reason because you cannot guide to other who doesn't want to learn. You can guide them who wants to learn. And therefore, according to me, let them pass an order and take appropriate action against that order.
Sir, they had attached the bank account. When I represented all these things, they taken one letter from us that we will pay it within couple of months, and they have withdrawn the attachment. But now the 2 months had passed, so they are asking again that whether are you paying or we should have to attach it again. Then now what should we do, sir?
But suppose when they can attach the bank account, there are two circumstances. They have to show in the letter itself that if you don't deposit this interest, it does not protect our revenue. You will stop your business. You will disappear something. That is one. Secondly, in terms of section 83, it says that if any proceeding has been initiated against you, like carry out inspection, search, or audit, special audit, or either notice issued under section 73 or 74, then they can do it. If no any proceeding is initiated against you except there is a liability of interest, then they cannot attach the bank account. If they attach the bank account, either you have to approach to the High Court. That is one. And so alternatively, what is your liability of interest as of today? Just you compute that interest liability as per your understanding, as per your computation, and seek installment from the department, because there is a provision section 80 where there is a power to give installments. You can seek installments 5, 10 and describe your financial condition, and says that because of COVID, because of over demand in the market, financial difficulties, I'm not in position, so kindly grant me a time of 10 months, 12 months, whatever the time limit you want. You can seek appropriate time limit from the commissionerate.
Sir, amount is not bigger one. It is around just 2 lakh or so. But sir, my question is about the technicality, sir. What they are asking is, number one thing, sir, the whatever you have paid is available as a credit in your cash ledger. So, and the order for payment of interest on net liability pertains to the ITC only. So, amount available in cash ledger cannot be netted off. That is their argument, number one, sir. Then, sir, what the judgment I quoted is, sir, it is from Ahmedabad only. And one party, sir, filed he was liable to pay around 115 crore of tax. They paid 100 crore and it was available, it was lying in their cash ledger, and they filed the DSTR 3B, sir. But technically that was filed with nil liability. So after a couple of months, they realized that why there is a credit of rupees 100 crore in their ledger account. So then they revised their 3B, or in the next month they paid that liability, and the credit was adjusted. And then department raised the interest on that 100 crore for a period of 3 months. Then they gone for REIT and they got the judgment. And in that, sir, the court mentioned that the SSE has filed the return, but due to technical glitch or whatever, the return has been filed in nil. So there is no fault on his part. So he should not be penalized for, and in that, sir, they explained that earlier in the payment of service tax, the liability was nullified the moment the challan was paid. So this is the procedural part, that it will be credited into the cash ledger, and that on then later on it will be adjusted. So it is a mechanism. When the SSE have not utilized that amount, he has not get benefited a bit out of the non-payment of tax. So the moment he paid the tax, at least he should not be penalized. Such type of explanations are given in that, sir. And we submitted all these things, but department is taking this stand, and they submit that you go for it and provide us the judgment. So just I am, as you are practicing in High Court, sir, I am asking in a general public interest, sir. Otherwise, the amount is not a big one, sir.
See, I absolutely agree with, and I'm with you on this. Because of technical glitch or because of the some mistake, person should not be penalized.
Okay,
And but see, department they don't see from that perspective, and therefore I always suggest, because either surrender or fight. There is no third way out, because either if you don't surrender, then you should fight it out. That is my suggestion in this.
Right, sir. What is then the chat box?
So there is one question
Yes.
that government has introduced the MSP scheme regarding late filing fee. The person who have filed who have paid the late filing fee, they can get refund.
No. Amnesty is for those people who have not filed the return.
It is
Who has
unjust.
filed the return with payment? No. Otherwise, what under Sabka Vishwas scheme came under this excise and service tax. Who have paid 100%, they would say that I already paid 100%. At least give me refund, because I was a regular taxpayer. I manufactured goods, or I provided services, and paid the tax on time. But now who did not pay, you are giving benefit of 50%. Give me that benefit. Like chartered accountant, you people paid service tax already from time to time regularly. Because of amnesty, will you go for a refund of those amount which you paid in past? Answer is no.
Okay.
I think there is no query.
Sure.
So,
I'm happy that at least everyone is clear now.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir, for enrich our knowledge in the appeal and education in the GST. Now I request BK Javra sir for the vote of thanks.
Chintan bhai is not there.
देखाता नहीं चिंतन भाई.
एक मिनट, let me see.
Phone no reply हम लोग.
Okay, no issue. Thank you very much, Modi sir. The lecture was as anticipated, very lucid and different from the normal one. You given the different type of reads, because nowadays the days are not far away from where we need to go for read. And nowadays, sir, for everything, unless and until court gets interfered, government is not taking any action. So I think it will also be helpful to us, and different type of rates, different type of notices, different type of assessment, submission, drafting. Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening in a very detailed and a lucid manner. And parallelly, we request you also, sir, that in future also, we will come to you for getting the benefit of your knowledge.
Most welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Romil. Thank you, Manoj bhai. Thank you, all the members, for giving patience hearing and remaining patience in good numbers. Once again, thank you very much, Hardik Modi sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Now we declare the meeting is over.